was working with kindergarteners, and I said, what do you think it would feel like if you didn't have a place to sleep tonight? What would that feel like? And these little 5-year-olds who, some of them are experiencing that, they told me what it feels like. And they need to tell you, because if you keep it silent, it hurts, and it makes you begin to feel like you're all alone, no one cares, and you're not, everybody else is better than you. So the thing that I do when I work with the kids in poverty is I then find out in inventory what's in that community, the community action agencies, the social services, what kind of organizations care about people in poverty and could help, so I can link them in. The kids who haven't experienced poverty in that group of 5-year-olds, one little girl, she drew a house, and she said, this is the 1-cent hotel. It's for all those people who have nowhere to sleep. Because see, when we understand, we don't judge. It's when we don't understand. You know, how many people have ever seen a kid or a family in poverty and, oh, maybe they got a big screen TV and they're watching cable television. Or maybe they've got Nikes, or, you know, and you think, a lot of people are thinking, well, why do they have those things? If they're really poor, they wouldn't have those things. So I teach a lot about, okay, well, let me help you understand that. Oprah Winfrey doesn't understand it. She said on her show, I'd rather help children in Africa than children in America. And the reason she said that is because she interviewed kids in Africa, and she said, what do you want? And the kids in Africa said, I want a uniform so I can go to school and get a good education. She interviewed the kids in America, and she said, what do you want? And the kids in America said, I want an iPod, cell phone. And here's what Oprah Winfrey missed. And I don't blame people for missing it, because we don't educate people about poverty. But I can help you. The iPod and the cell phone, this country teaches you that's your uniform. That's what you need to belong. You know, if I'm a kid and I walk into school and I have really nice Nike tennis shoes on, how do I get treated? Ooh, all of a sudden everybody wants, there's status, and you get noticed. And those are parts of belonging. Do you know why kids join gangs? To belong. And there's a guy named Maslow who studied human beings and what we need as a species. And he said, for human species, belonging, it's right up there with eating as a human need. We need to belong. We'll do anything to belong. If we are judging people, we can't understand what's really going on behind that behavior. If somebody's rude and smart-mouthed, there's a reason for it. Man, poverty teaches you attitude. You watch your family members not be treated very well, and you will develop an attitude. My brother Wayne, his entire mouth's full of super glue. That's how he would make his teeth stop hurting. Yeah, I had attitude. I had a smart mouth. We had a teacher of the year before last. She says, they were interviewing her, and they said, well, how do you do so well with some of your kids? And she said, well, I only work with the ones who want to learn. No way. No way. You know, everyone wants to learn, but they may not believe it's possible. So as a kid, you have so much power. You have so much power to reach out and say, it's not okay to make fun of somebody because of their haircut or their car that they have or don't have, or the shoes that they're wearing. You know, let's treat people like people. Get to know what people are good about and find ways to help them to fight some of those barriers that they face because of poverty, of not being able to participate. A lot of times they can't pay the fees and participate in things at school. So we could have a fundraiser. It's resolvable. What do you think happens to kids when it's time to buy yearbooks who have no money?
We don't have yearbooks in our school.
Or school pictures. You know, they don't get their pictures, which means they don't get their history. So I work with a lot of schools to really think about, okay, how can we make sure every kid gets a picture? Because you saw in the video, I don't have one picture. I can afford school pictures. So how do we, little things like that, you can look at what's going on in your own school. Where are those places where people are being excluded, and say, okay, what else could we do? Maybe we go to different clubs in the community and say, could you sponsor kids to get pictures? There's lots of solutions, but first we got to put the problems on the table.
What kept you so strong even though you're living in poverty?
I got a lot of messages from society that I didn't look right, I didn't talk right, I didn't have the right family, we didn't have the right clothes, we didn't live in the right kinds of neighborhoods. But when I was with my family, I was treated like I was queen. I was special. I was the girl because there were 5 brothers. Now what I know from studying is that when someone is treated special, they develop a resiliency or an ability to not listen to those messages so much. So I did come to believe that I wasn't as smart and I wasn't as good as the people who were making it. But because I had those messages from my family, I had some belief that I was a little bit different and maybe I could. And then, when you believe that, you start looking for other people who believe it. And that's really how I connected into mentors.
What inspired you to get an education?
I worked my whole life. I worked in the fields. When I was 15, I got a job in a foam rubber factory. And I worked there for 2 years. They found out I was 17, and 2 years later fired me for being too young to be in the factory. I worked at Pizza Hut. I worked all the kinds of jobs you're going to get if you don't get educated. You're going to get those kinds of jobs where you make choices between rent and food. Because we live in a nation where if you're not educated or skilled labor, like electrician or plumber or some of those skills, you're not going to earn a living wage. Our labor market doesn't pay a living wage, and you don't move up. So I passed by Pizza Hut and I thought, what am I going to do? Because I not only had my light shut off, I had a 72-hour eviction notice. And I'd already gotten my once-a-year emergency welfare check because you only allow 1 emergency a year. So I was about to become homeless with my kids. I couldn't go live with my mom and dad because they were living in a 10-foot trailer, and 2 of my brothers and their families lived there. So I didn't know what to do, but I had that phone number. So I called that number, and I was really privileged. I got into the pilot program, the very first pilot program. Now, group 1 in the pilot program, we got Section 8 housing, which meant I didn't have to worry about being homeless anymore. And just having that off of my mind really helped me to think, maybe I could get that GED they're talking about. Then I'll be somebody. That's what I wrote in my diary in 1986. Maybe I'll get that GED. I didn't start out thinking I'm going to get a doctorate. I started out thinking maybe I can get the GED. And then I'll be somebody. And then it was like, okay, well, that wasn't so bad. Maybe I could get that 2-year degree that they're talking about. So they had by then taken me to the community college and introduced me to possibilities and really worked on helping me build my self-concept. And I started realizing as I began spending time around people who were making it that they weren't better than me. They just had different lives. They had different experiences. And I was shocked to learn that the people who were making it had never been evicted. I thought everybody had my life and they all just handled it better. I thought if people had nice hair, that was an innate talent. They're just born. Either you're born knowing, because I no matter what I did, I couldn't make my hair look like the people who were making it. Well, now I know that's because my shampoo was hand soap or pump up powder in a gas station, and my cousin Wanda was cutting my hair. But back then, I internalized it as something's wrong with me. So you might meet somebody, or you might feel this yourself. Come to believe that something's wrong with you. But the truth is, if you just look inside, you have a lot to offer. And that's where I start, is rebuilding the hope for people. I do conferences for people in poverty now. I just did a conference for 270 people who live in poverty right now. And I just work to unravel the shame that they're taught by that evil villain poverty. And I work to help them build an address book with as many people who are not in the crisis of poverty as they have who are, to really truly give them opportunities to move out and stay out. Poverty doesn't have to be. It's resolvable. During the war on poverty, Johnson's war on poverty, we reduced poverty 30%. When we were focused on it as a nation, saying we're not going to have poverty, it's not okay, we were reducing it. Then the funding was taken away from the war on poverty and put into the war on Vietnam. And that's when poverty began to escalate again in our country. So get to know your history. Ask the questions. Listen to each other. Have conversations. Don't let this issue be silent so that you or your peers end up getting lost. And we lose more potential. Could you imagine a society where everyone gets to develop their fullest potential? That's where I'm going to live. Thank you very much for having me. I wish I had more time with you.